the season for the Euroseries powered by Nova. This the third of 6 events which comprises the inaugural season for the Euroseries powered by Nova. They have already been to Paul Ricard and the Slovakia ring, and we have now got a double header to look forward to around the home of the Austrian Grand Prix. Well, the points leader is Oliver Freimuth, and it was Freimuth who qualified in pole position in his Renault Megane trophy car, which has been so successful already this year. 1 victory, 2 second places to his credit. Alongside him on the front row of the grid is Marco Helistangas, and that car involved in a fairly sizable incident in qualifying earlier on, just as Marco was setting a good time, but the Finnish driver pleased to see there on the grid, albeit with a new front spoiler. This is how they line with Freimuth and Helistangas on the front row. Then it's Simeon Ivanov, the Bulgarian driver, in third from Naomi Shift in the KTM Crossbow. Luca Mangoni lines up in 5th, clear of Roberto Gentili. Then Tiziano Capelletti in 7th, ahead of Tony Castillo Navas. Javier Ibran in 9th. Claudio Giudice completes the top 10. And then we have got, towards the back of the field, the very nice looking Maserati. So the cars just having the final countdown. It's a 50-minute race, as ever in the Euroseries powered by Nova. They have got to make a mandatory pit stop at some point during the course of the next 50 minutes. And this is a very different challenge to the 2 circuits where they have competed already this season. The Paul Ricard high-tech test track, some very fast sections, but also a lot of technical sections of the circuit as well, and a generally pretty flat layout. Then the Slovakia ring, a much twistier proposition here. The Red Bull ring, the real characteristic is the substantial elevation changes as the circuit winds its way around through the Austrian countryside, together with some really tricky braking zones. We've seen throughout the course of free practice yesterday, the drivers really struggling on the brakes uphill into turn 1, where we've had more than one incident already, and also then the downhill braking zone for the final turn as well, which is what caught out the number 15 Ginetta in qualifying earlier on. So the 1-minute board is shown to the drivers. They'll then be off on their formation lap ahead of the rolling start. Well, absolutely glorious conditions for motor racing here at the Red Bull Ring. It is about 33 degrees, not a breeze to speak of at all, and a perfectly clear blue sky. A couple of clouds creeping in over the wooded hilltops, but a magnificent setting for motor racing, and I'm sure we will be in for a thoroughly entertaining race. As the 30-second board shown to the drivers. The Red Bull Ring, just to position it geographically, it's just outside the town of Zeltweg, which has always really been, alongside Salzburg, as the home of Austrian motorsport. The Zeltweg Airfield circuit hosting the Austrian Grand Prix Formula 1 race in the mid-1960s, and then thereafter the construction of the legendary AUSTRIA ring from the 70s and 80s. The track falling into disrepair, reconstituted as the Red Bull Ring, or as the A1 ring rather, in the mid-1990s, and then it's been the Red Bull Ring since 2011, hosting the Austrian Grand Prix once more from the 2014 season. So the cars off on this formation lap. Chance to get a view of the circuit, and opportunity as well to enjoy the absolutely fantastic KTM Crossbow. Our understanding is that it's going to be the 21-year-old South African Naomi Schiff who will be starting the car in this race. And Naomi, the reigning Clio Cup China champion, with 8 victories to her credit last season, and that car making an excellent debut at the Slovakia ring, where Naomi finished in 3rd place in the first race, and then the race won by Reinhold Kurfler in race 2. So this is a track that is really quite straining on the engines, but also on the brakes as well. We catch a glimpse of the Maserati, and then it's Javier Ibran who is there to the back of the field as Oliver Freimuth in the Renault Megane weaves along, and it's really been all about himself and the pairing of Marco Helistangas, Frederick Blomstedt, which has been much the narrative of the season. Freimuth, the points leader, on 38 points ahead of this weekend. Then it is second place Manuel Azani, who isn't here, on 32 points. Then Blomstedt and Helistangas on 29 points. It's great to see Simeon Ivanov, the Bulgarian driver, up there in the sky blue Ginetta G50. The multiple Bulgarian kart champion, the 27-year-old, who raced in Formula Renault 2-litre cars midway through the past decade, taking a little bit of time out of motorsport and really looking impressive here at the Red Bull Ring as the cars swooping downhill through turns 4, 5 and 6 now before we come to the concluding stages of this relatively brief formation lap. There is the number 27 car, that is Luca Magnoni, and Luca, who has been racing in his Ginetta G50 for quite some time, both in Italy and across Europe in Ginetta and GT4 competition, as the pace car about to peel away. The 5th race of the Euro Series powered by Nova season about to get started. Who will lead the charge to turn 1? The white Megane of Oliver Freymuth, or will it be Marco Hederstangas in the red Ginetta? We are about to find out as the field come through the final turn, waiting for the gantry to change as we are about to go racing. And away we go, the lights go green and the field fans out almost 4 or 5 wide in the mid-pack as it's the KTM Crossbow which rather gets swamped as Freymuth leads the charge up towards the first corner. A dispute for second place. And it's Ivanov who tips through in second. They're all cleanly through as the Maserati applies the power and accelerates uphill, but already Oliver Freymuth looking to build a little bit of an advantage over Simeon Ivanov. And then we've got Marco Hederstangas just in behind him. It's Claudio Giudici in the Maserati, who looks to sneak to the inside of Roberto Gentili. Gentili pushed out wide through turn 2 to then have this long undulating run, broadly speaking, downhill towards turn 3. And already Freymuth beginning to build a little bit of an advantage over Ivanov. Then we've got the fight for 4th, currently headed by the yellow and black Maserati of Gentili. Then we've got Claudio Giudici and Luca Magnoni just in behind. And then a little bit of a gap in the traffic back to Tiziano Cappelletti and Javier Ibran. And it's really Naomi Schiff who's had the nightmare first lap. The KTM Crossbow down into 9th place. So the somewhat battle-scarred G50 of Marco Hederstangas chasing down the similar car of Simeon Ivanov. There's the KTM Crossbow, clear of Tony Castillo Navas as downhill into this final turn. We've seen drivers being caught out all weekend. The road just drops away, with quite a wide expanse of runoff as well at the bottom, but they all negotiate it safely, and almost as soon as the road bottoms out, they climb up towards the first turn once more, as flashing his headlights is Claudio Giudici as he looks to make progress. Likewise for Javier Ibran to the inside of Cappelletti at turn 1, but then Ibran runs wide. That gives the pink Ginetta of Cappelletti the opportunity to power back past. Meanwhile, in the fight for second place, Simeon Ivanov just defending uphill into turn 2. And as a result, there's no way through for Hederstangas at the moment. And what that means is that everybody is beginning to form a queue behind the sky blue car of the Bulgarian driver, because there isn't really much gap between Steganas and then Claudio Giudici, with Roberto Gentili far from dropped on the brakes downhill into turn 2. And then this long run back down the hill that they were just climbing a few moments ago. Red Bull Ring still retains much of the original layout of the much-loved AUSTRIA ring. And at the moment, the Finnish driver unable really to apply undue pressure to the Bulgarian. Maybe they're just working together in these early stages. There is Luca Magnoni. Here is our race leader, Oliver Freymuth. And Freymuth beginning to build out a very handy advantage as he has pulled the best part of a second away from his rivals over the course of this second lap of the race, which is completed now by the Megane. And the gap goes out to 2.8 seconds, a slightly weaker final sector for Freymuth. Maybe he made a mistake through the final turn we didn't quite see. Then we've got this three-way tussle for second, which climbs on out of the first corner. And Ivanov doing exactly what he needs to do, which is working on his corner exits. And that is, as a result, preventing Marco Helistangas from finding a way past. Claudio Giudici, for the time being, just content to sit there in the Maserati. Lovely throaty roar from Maserati as he chases the two Ginetta G50s along the back straight. All the while, though, they're just easing clear of Luca Magnoni. Magnoni moving clear of Roberto Gentili last time around. Said out of turn 2. Surely driver stamina is going to come to the fore as well over the course of the next 50 minutes, because it's going to be extremely hot work at the wheel of these cars. Therefore, the drivers don't want to unduly push themselves or their machinery early on. So pretty much status quo through this third lap in the fight for second. Magnoni in 5th, now just building a little bit of daylight between himself and Roberto Gentili. In 7th place, it's still Tiziano Capoletti, then Javier Ibran in 8th, Naomi Schiff in 9th, not making any progress. And it's Tony Castillo-Nava who completes the pack as the third lap of the race reeled off. And Freymuth builds his advantage by a 10th second as now Helistangas loses patience with Ivanov and looks to make the move uphill into turn 1, squirms on the brake, snatches a brake, runs out very, very wide and rejoins alongside Claudio Giudici as they climb uphill. But I suspect he's going to have to concede to the Maserati to avoid any sort of penalty as much as anything for not gaining the energy advantage. And as we were saying, on the formation lap, it's been that first corner which has caused so many problems during free practice this weekend. The drivers really struggling to get a reference point on the brakes. And despite, well, you see it again, the tyre locked all the way through the apex. And Simeon Ivanov read that perfectly, just eased off the pace, gave plenty of space for the Red Ginetta to have its moment. And what that has done is really given Simeon Ivanov now quite a handy advantage over Claudio Giudici from 2nd to 3rd. It's brought Luca Magnoni and Roberto Gentili into the mix as well, into the fight for 3rd position. Meanwhile, there is Naomi Schiff, the black number 99 KTM Crossbow. She is trying to overhaul Javier Ibran. At the fight for 8th and 9th, here is Oliver Freymuth then. And Freymuth having a pretty good run of it in these early stages. 2.9 seconds advantage over Simeon Ivanov last time through. This is the end of lap 4. Along the start and finish straight they come. So a good lap from Freymuth, and his advantage goes up by a second to 3.9 seconds. And now it's the turn of Claudio Giudici to apply the pressure. Meanwhile, here is a replay of an incident for Javier Ibran, who just gets into the gravel trap, keeps the right foot firmly planted as the Ginetta G55 bucks and weaves. Naomi Schiff not able to take advantage that we saw, but yes, she's now moved clear of the Ginetta up into 8th place. Claudio Giudici reeling in Simeon Ivanov. The gap between Ivanov and Giudici was just under half a second at the start of the lap. It is considerably less than that by the time they arrive into turn 2. Now, it might be a slightly easier task here for the Maserati to find its way past the Ginetta, because when you've got two cars that are very similar dicing, you can't get that differential. You get a multi-mark racing and squeezing to the inside turn 3 and gliding past. Great move from Claudio Giudici, so he moves up into 2nd place, just sneaking to the inside of Simeon Ivanov. Now, can the Bulgarian stay with the Maserati? That's the big question. Here's another look at it. Ivanov didn't want to make it easy, but by the time he really wanted to move across and cover the line, it was already too late. The Maserati was there and past. We've got confirmation coming up on our timing screen here that all the drivers in the race have been warned about obeying track limits in advance of any penalties being applied. So that could be a little bit of a factor, as with Freymuth leading the way, everybody else is still pretty closely bunched. Freymuth's advantage fractionally under 4 seconds. It's the field charge through that first turn. You can see the sausage curb as well, just on the exit of the rumble strip at the edge of turn 1 to act as a deterrent for any wayward moments. As now Marko Helistangas lining up for another crack at Semyon Ivanov into turn 2. Can't quite do it. They climb uphill through the apex, and really it's Helistangas who needs to be mindful here. The driver finished 14th in last year's Porsche GT3 Championship in Finland, because he has had that moment at turn 1 which we saw where he ran very wide. He was just about all 4 wheels over the white line coming through turn 2 on that occasion, but it seems to be working now. Will he be able to make a repeat of the move pulled off by Claudio Giudice last time around? He just doesn't seem quite confident in committing to it, possibly because he overstretched the limits in qualifying earlier on, thumping the car against the Armco barrier through the final turn. But you can see how much corner speed he's carrying in relation to the Bulgarian driver. Now, will he challenge downhill into the final pair of turns? They come over the crown in the road, and downhill again, Semyon Ivanov preempts the move, just covers the line. But then, again, running wide there, Helistangas. He really, really needs to be careful, and you suspect the team are going to be saying something over the radio. All the while now, inviting himself to the party is Luca Magnoni. So Magnoni in the white number 27 car, closing in on Semyon Ivanov. Ivanov now almost 3 seconds back from Claudio Giudice, and this is the challenge here for Helistangas. He's got the pace to really pull clear of the Bulgarian driver if he can get past him. But it is one thing, of course, to catch the car in front. It's quite another to find a way past, and Ivanov knows exactly how to position his machinery. Just covers the middle of the road uphill into turn 2. So Semyon Ivanov acting as a cork of the bottle, but looking for the tighter exit there was the Finnish driver Helistangas, and that's going to give Marko the opportunity, surely, if he can maintain that run along the back straight towards turn 3, to be able to sneak through and up into 3rd place. It's going to come down to boldness on the brakes, but through just about, he snatches a break again, runs out wide, and Ivanov looking for the switchback, and he may have got it in terms of track position. The pair of them continue side by side downhill, but the inside line for the left-hander in favour of Helistangas, who pushes Ivanov out wide, and Luca Magnoni slips past as well. So it's all change on this 7th lap of the race. Luca Magnoni then up into 4th position. Now, how quickly can he and the car in front begin to reel in Claudio Giudice in 2nd place? There is Giudice 3.4 seconds back from the race leader Oliver Freimuth. Then we have got this trio of Ginettas. So they head through the final turn. Freimuth sets a 1 minute 41.6, but he's being caught very, very rapidly by Claudio Giudice, who just sets the fastest lap of the race. He's now within 2.7 seconds of Oliver Freimuth. So we're on to lap 8. The order is Freimuth leads, Claudio Giudice is 2nd, Marko Helistangas is 3rd, Luca Magnoni 4th, Semyon Ivanov in 5th, Tiziano Cappelletti in 6th, Juan Roberto Gentili in 7th, Naomi Schiff is in 8th, Javier Ibran in 9th, and Tony Castillo-Nava completes the top 10. We're only 30 minutes into this one. Pit window will be opening in some 7 minutes' time, so there is ample opportunity for this battle to be sorted out on track. And are we going to start seeing now a convergence of the leaders? Because Freimuth, if you recall, 2 laps ago when we last saw him, was 4 seconds clear of the Maserati of Giudice. That has now come down to 2.7 seconds. It's a further 4.7 seconds back to Marko Helistangas. Helistangas now is released into some clear air, setting exactly the same first sector time as the 2 cars in front of him. What about sector 2? It's been a good second sector for Freimuth. It has not been such a good one for the Giudice. It's been a reasonably good one for Helistangas, who closes in by a couple of tenths on the car in 2nd place. There is race leader Oliver Freimuth. Freimuth in pursuit of his 2nd victory of the season. He's also twice been runner-up. And what we have seen with the 54-year-old German driver is that he likes to be out in clear air. When he has to get his elbows out and dice, he's a little bit more tentative in the Megane. as he squirms on the brakes, powers uphill through turn 1. It was a better lap, though, for Fremuth in comparison to Claudio Giudice. His lead goes up by 0.4 of a second, out to now 3.1 seconds exactly. So Fremuth getting what he wants from this race, which is to manage it perfectly. Not unsurprisingly, given his weapon of choice, his principal experience before coming into the Euroseries powered by Nova was in the McGann Trophy, which used to run as part of the World Series by Renault before being dropped a couple of years ago. Seasonal best result for Fremuth in the series of 15th place back in 2013, but he knows the car inside out. Well, there's Stangas and Magnoni just beginning to ease away from Simeon Ivanov. Heather Stangas not particularly chasing down Giudice's advantage. It was 4.5 seconds at the start of the lap. It's come down actually by half a second through the first sector. The battle between second and third place. What about this middle sector? About to find out. And it comes down by a further 0.4 of a second. So we are going to see a replay, meanwhile, of Roberto Gentili crunching into Tiziano Cappelletti, and that is going to result in 2 pretty badly damaged Ginetta G50s. That move never on from Gentili, who did not live up to his surname then. Wasn't quite the Takuma Sato tribute act, but it wasn't a million miles away. And so I suspect that both of those cars will be out of proceedings. What that does mean is Naomi Schiff is promoted to 6th, Javier Ibran to 7th, and Tony Castillo-Navat will be up into 8th position, and neither Cappelletti nor Gentili. In fact, Cappelletti is now through the second sector, so he's running. Roberto Gentili, I suspect, damaged the front left suspension there from the replays that we saw. And probably to surprise of absolutely nobody, confirmation on the timing screen, that incident is about to be investigated. So that was a brilliant lap from Marco Helistangas, his fastest of the race, and it means that he's now within 2.8 seconds of Claudio Giudice's. Meanwhile, Luca Magnoni has been reeled in once more by Simeon Ivanov. So Ivanov chasing Magnoni. This is the fight for 4th and 5th place. And there's bits of Ginetta all over the road there. I suspect it's Tiziano Cappelletti trying to at least recover to the pits. And here, indeed, is Cappelletti. Oh, my goodness me. Absolutely shattered front windscreen, as you can see. Minus the engine covering. And that would appear to most likely be that for Cappelletti. Gentili, we hear, is also still running. As here is Claudio Giudice in second place, and he has closed up, it would appear, on Oliver Fremuth over the course of this last lap. It's a bad lap from Fremuth, a much better lap from Giudice. The gap between first and second comes down to 1.8 seconds, and Heather Stangas running to the same pace as Giudice means that now the leading trio separated by just 4.7 seconds, as the early hair of Oliver Fremuth now beginning to be just chased down a little bit. We've got a warning to Javier Ibran for not respecting track limits. And Ibran can't afford a drive-through penalty, as here comes the remainder of Roberto Gentili's car. Driver at the wheel. Well, hopefully both the Ginettas will be repairable for tomorrow, and that the damage is to the deformable body parts and bodywork, which are always supposed to crumple in the event of an impact, so that we will see both cars out for the second race, the Euroseries powered by Nova weekend. Through turn 3 then we come, and Luca Magnoni has still got Simeon Ivanov beginning to buzz onto his tail. What about the front of the field? Well, through sector 1, Giudice and Heather Stangas both quicker than Fremuth. Through sector 2, Fremuth in fact the pace setter, so the gaps, much as they were at the start of the lap, through the first 2 sectors, as we are rapidly approaching the opening of the pit window. Of course, they've all got to come in and make mandatory pit stops. So at the moment, Luca Magnoni just able to maintain that advantage over Simeon Mannoni, whose career best seasonal result was a 14th place in the Italian Ginetta G50 Championship back in 2012. Simeon also doing most of his career racing state in Italy, 21st in the 2007 Formula Renault 2-litre Italian Championship back at the era when that was really one of the preeminent single-seater entry-level categories in Europe. And Ivanov still staying with Mannoni. All the while, though, this group of cars now 5 seconds back from the leading trio. It's been a very good first sector for Claudio Giudice. He sets the fastest first sector of anybody in the race. We're on lap 12. The gap from first to second, 1.5 seconds. The gap from second to third, 3.3 seconds. And the frustration here for Helis Dangas is that having just set his personal best lap of the race, it was still, last time around, 0.4 slower than that offered up by Claudio Giudice. So there are 30 minutes to go here in the opening race of the weekend, the 5th of the season for the Euro Series powered by Nova. Thank you very much for joining myself, Ben Evans, and everybody from the Euro Series by Nova paddock community in the Red Bull Ring this afternoon. I hope you're enjoying the action in glorious sunshine here in the heart of Austria as the pit window is now open. At what point are we going to see people ducking in? Meanwhile, Claudio Giudice is on for the best lap of the race and indeed sets the fast lap of the race. So 1 minute 40.4 for the Maserati, who is now within just 0.6 of a second of Oliver Freymuth at the front of the field. Still the fight for 4th and 5th between Mannoni and Ivanov rages. 0.8 between the pair of them as they conclude lap 12 and head on uphill. 4.7 seconds ahead of them is Marco Helis Dangas. He runs in 3rd place, but really, this is the fast lap of the race. As you see, Claudio Giudice is possibly the story, but he's had a terrible first sector and has given away 0.5 second to Oliver Freymuth, whereas these two Ginettas lapping with remarkable consistency, just 1/10 of a second or so between each of their lap times for the last several laps, flying in tandem, both giving themselves a very good opportunity later on in the race. Meanwhile, the first of our scheduled pit stops has taken place. That is Naomi Schiff in the KTM Crossbow. So Naomi Schiff, who qualified so well, but having a pretty disappointing start to the race, she obviously drops down to 8th place, as a result of being the only driver to have made her planned pit stop. So we continue to enjoy the battle for 4th position. I can tell you that the battle for the lead has somewhat fizzled out on this last lap, as now Luca Mannoni decides enough of giving Simeon Ivanov a tow around the circuit. He's going to head to the pits, but he really backs off the pace very, very early there, Mannoni, as now he heads downhill to undertake his mandatory pit stop. Gets down to what will feel like the agonisingly slow 60 kilometres per hour pit lane speed limit. Meanwhile, there is the Maserati that's in, and it's going to be Mauro Calamia who takes over for the second half of the race, so we understand. And Calamia, a former FIA F2 championship racer. Also in is the race leader as well. That's Oliver Freymuth. He will go the distance single-handedly. Meanwhile, there is the KTM Crossbow of, again, we believe it's Naomi Schiff, who is continuing for the whole race, but there is the possibility that we might be seeing Reinhard Körfler, the Austrian driver behind the wheel. He's the second entered driver. And what we don't know whether they're doing a race apiece or whether or not they are making the driver change mid-race. So here then is, by dint of not having made his pit stop yet, Marco Helis Dangas, the race leader. He will be handing over to the 23-year-old Swedish driver, Fredrik Blomstedt. Helis Dangas, now that he's got a little bit of clear air, will be looking to have done the best possible in-lap, because he gets on the brakes into the white line, and so he at pretty much exactly mid-race distance will pass over to the former Formula Renault 2-litre racer, Frederick Blomstedt. The pair of them 3 times on the podium this year, 2 third places and 1 second place. Also a DNF, of course, in the first race at the Slovakia ring, which has hurt them a little bit in terms of the accumulation of points. So, post-pit stops, and that would appear to be Mauro Calamia, who has emerged out on track ahead of Oliver Freymuth. But I think it didn't look particularly like Calamia who was being strapped into the car. I just wonder whether or not we saw Mauro Calamia for the first half of the race, and that it's now going to be Claudio Giudici for this second half. We'll certainly find out over the next few moments, because Calamia racing incredibly successfully in the Trofeo Maserati a couple of seasons ago, and the way that Freymuth is closing right up onto the tail of the Maserati, looking to reclaim the advantage, to me suggests that is quite possibly Claudio Giudici, who is at the wheel for the remaining 25 minutes. So this is what might be the fight for the lead. It really depends at the point at which Frederick Blomstedt emerges from the pits, because a slow lap here from the Maserati, bottling up the Megane of Freymuth behind, might just give Blomstedt the opportunity in the Ginetta to sneak out of the pits and take the lead. So this battle heads through the final turn onto the conclusion of lap 14. We do have one car not in the pits yet. That's Javier Ibrand. So across the line come the Maserati and the Renault. They turn through the first corner now. And there is Blomstedt emerging from the pitch. You just caught a glimpse of Blomstedt coming out in essentially third place, as now we see a challenge for what will be the lead of the race, as Freymuth draws alongside the Maserati. The pair of them power uphill, and Freymuth moves through and takes the lead of the race. So Oliver Freymuth reclaiming the advantage from the Maserati of Claudio Giudici and Mauro Calamia, and then in third now it's Frederick Blomstedt. So Freymuth, only 1 win so far this season. Will this be the opportunity for win number 2? Surely this is where driver fitness is going to start to have a significant bearing as well for Freymuth. vis-a-vis Frederick Blomstedt will be fresh and ready for a 25-minute sprint, whereas Freymuth will have been getting, I'm sure, pretty hot in the furnace-like cockpit of the Megane. Freymuth heading through this final sector of the lap. The round of pit stops has been completed because Javier Ibrand is in, so these cars are going to surge past and reclaim their positions at the front of the field. Well, there is Blomstedt. Oh, and a big moment for the Maserati, which very nearly got snapped across the track through the final turn. So across the line then, Freymuth leads. Second place is the Maserati. I suspect it is Claudio Giudici behind the wheel, because Mauro Calamia is a fine exponent of Maserati racing. And a little bit wayward here. We see another moment onto the AstroTurf and across, and then applies the throttle. Well saved. That could have been a very expensive moment. And Blomstedt chasing down the Maserati. This the battle for second and third place. So they head from turns 2 to turns 3. The road gently undulating, but all the while heading downhill. In the background there, you caught a glimpse. Headlights ablaze on the KTM Crossbow, which leads me to suspect that it's probably Reinhold Koerfler at the wheel. Koerfler, a former Formula BMW Junior champion, going back to 2001. He's been an exponent of KTM Crossbow racing for quite some time. As again, just out over the curb, the Maserati, Frederick Blomstedt reeling it in with some rapidity. And Blomstedt, if he can, will want to clear the Maserati. And this is what he can about this man, the race leader, Oliver Freymuth. So Freymuth to the end of lap 16. We have got just over 40% of the race remaining, as At what point does Blomstead pull the trigger and go for the move? Will he remember the Maserati's moment from last time? As into the pit lane for Oliver Freymuth. So Freymuth comes back in, and this is an unplanned pit stop. So the race leader, Freymuth, heads to the pits. Disaster for the German driver. And so this suddenly is catapulted into being the fight for the lead of the race between the Maserati and the sprightly Ginetta, and Blomstead gets the power down much more smoothly coming out of turn one. He draws alongside the Maserati heading uphill, but the sheer straight line grunt of the Maserati will enable Giudici to draw alongside as they head towards turn two. Giudici covers the inside line. Now, can Blomstead get the switchback? Yes, he can. That was beautifully judged by the Swedish driver, Fredrik Blomstead. He moves clear into the lead of the race, as that is not what we wanted to see with Oliver Freymuth's car. The rear bodywork coming off. So what that also does is transforms this fight between Luca Mainoni and Simeon Ivanov into one for the final spot on the podium. They are being chased down very rapidly by the flying KTM Crossbow. As you say, we suspect with Reinhold Koerfler behind the wheel. Meanwhile, here is another look at the battle for the lead. So uphill, the Maserati using all of the horses available to it. Blomstead, you can see, taking the very wide line in, takes the acute cut through, gets the power down so early and sprints back past. That is exactly how they would teach it in racing school. So in the Austrian heat, this fifth race of the Euroseries powered by Nova, beginning to become just a little bit attritional. We have had three retirements, Tiziano Capoletti and Roberto Gentili, after the former was drop kicked out of the race by the latter. And then now we've got Oliver Freymuth in the pits in the Megane. So this is the fight for third then. The white Ginetta of Luca Mainoni, the sky blue Ginetta of Simeon Ivanov. Then we've got the KTM Crossbow, Naomi Schiff and Reinhold Koerfler. The KTM winning the second of the race at the Slovakia ring, finishing third in race one. And second place, one would suggest, is potentially on the cards this afternoon, because the Maserati, last time round, doing a 1 minute 44.3. That's versus a 1 minute 42.6 for Luca Mainoni. So the gap from second to third is coming down. It was 3.2 seconds at the start of the lap. But with 18.5 minutes remaining, there's plenty of time for that gap to be whittled away. And this is a multi-mark GT4 racing, which you'd want to see it. Maserati, Ginetta, KTM, all in the mix. We did, of course, have the Renault, but that has now remained in the pits. Whether or not Freymuth re-emerges, we will find out in due course. That also potentially has a big impact in the way that the points get dispersed, as the race leader, Fredrik Blomstead, he was 1.5 seconds clear of Giudici at the start of the lap. Across the line, Blomstead has gone out to 2.7 seconds. It's a much better lap, though, for the Maserati, 1 minute 42.6. So that stems the blood flow to a certain extent, because all four cars running in the fight for second through to fifth, all in the 1 minute 42 second brackets. The quickest of them of all was the KTM Crossbow. But now the challenge for both Simeon Ivanov and Naomi Schiff or Reinhold Koerfler is to find a way past Mainoni, having caught him. Meanwhile, a big snatch of the brake for the Maserati at turn two, and that's surely going to help the progress of Mainoni just a little bit, because it's this long run from turn two to turn three. If you get a poor exit from turn two, you're just losing time almost with every single metre. This is one of those tracks, the Red Bull Ring, we have seen throughout qualifying for all the categories racing this weekend very evenly matched times, but we've also seen during a free practice yesterday the drivers really struggling to lap consistently, and because the layout of the circuit has got slightly fewer turns than many that we'd visit, instead it really becomes a test of driver consistency. Simeononi giving away some time to the Maserati through the middle sector of the lap. There is the Maserati in second place. Here comes Luca Magnoni in third, just clear of Simeon Ivanov. And then the KTM looking particularly menacing, but as yet unable to find a way to propel past the sky blue Ginetta of Simeon Ivanov. Now, I don't think the KTM is going to be quite close enough as they head towards turn one for the 20th time. Just looking to the inside. No way through. So whereas we were, it was a better lap, though, in the fight for second and third for Luca Magnoni. He closes up to the Maserati to the tune of 0.3 of a second. So that comes down to 2.9 seconds. So with just over 50 minutes remaining, Frederick Blomstedt is our race leader. He's 4.1 seconds clear of Mauro Calamir. In third place, it's Luca Magnoni. Fourth, Simeon Ivanov. Fifth, the KTM crossbow of Naomi Schiff and Reinhold Koerfler. Sixth place is Javier Ibran. And seventh is Tonia Castillo-Nava. This, of course, the home race for the KTM crossbow, and a slightly different design, of course, to this iteration of the crossbow, because you may well recall that sort of the initial run of the crossbow was an open, almost an open, well, it was an open cockpit car, but almost very skeletal in structure, whereas this one looks a little bit more like a conventional GT4 car. Probably that the closest visual cue is maybe the Sin car, Rosen Daskarlov's concern, which takes not dissimilar design cues. So Claudio Giudice has had another lap where he's just conceded a little bit of ground to the progress of Luca Magnoni. Magnoni easing away now from Simeon Ivanov, as the Bulgarian driver having to drive a little bit more with his mirrors than he was previously. So it's a 1 minute 42.2 for the Maserati. Identical time for Luca Magnoni in third. Ivanov a little bit quicker than Magnoni, but that's really because he's being pushed along by the KTM crossbow, Reinhold Koerfler and Naomi Schiff. So not totally clear who's at the wheel of the KTM crossbow, because the car running a little bit more consistently than it did in the first half of the race, which would suggest that either Naomi Schiff has taken very full advantage of the opportunity to reflect during the pit stops, or that possibly it is Reinhold Koerfler who's taken over. So this trio of cars fighting for third head downhill into the braking zone for turn three. Neither, although they're all running in close contention, neither of them is really quite close enough to quite challenge the car in front. So they're almost waiting to see who will blink first. However, this battle is the best part of 10 seconds clear of Javier Ibran in sixth. In turn, Ibran has got almost 12 seconds worth of advantage over Tony Castillo-Nava in seventh. Well, here is a replay of the race leader, Frederick Blomstedt, just running out of road on the exit of turn one, riding the big sausage curb as a result. I don't think it's going to be causing particularly undue concern at all for Blomstedt. His lead, the best part of 5 seconds over the Maserati. But that comes down to 1.8 seconds, so Blomstedt, in fact, losing an awful lot of time over the course of that last lap, a 1 minute 44.4, and some of it as a result of that moment at turn one. But I think it was more the effect of possibly backing off the throttle, which we couldn't get a sense of from that super slow motion, and then all the time that just ebbed away on this climb uphill towards turn two. So here is the race leader, Fred Blomstedt, out of turn two. The Maserati, Mauro Calamir and Claudio Giudice closing up. And then a gap of some 3.3 seconds back to Luca Magnoni. And the progress of the Maserati has been a little bit erratic during the second half of the race, but that last lap was a particularly good one, 1 minute 41.8. And that's versus a 1 minute 40.4, which was the fastest lap of the race set by the Maserati just before the pit stop. So we've got 11 minutes and change remaining here at the Red Bull Ring in the 5th race of the season for the Euro Series, powered by Nova. Early race leader Oliver Freymuth retiring just after the mid-race pit stops, and thereafter it's been Frederick Blomstead who's led the way from the Maserati of Claudio Giudice and Mauro Calamir. Then we've got this battle for 3rd place between Luca Magnoni, Simeon Ivanov in their Ginettas, and then the Naomi Schiff and Reinhold Koerfler driven KTM Crossbow. And it's the KTM Crossbow which remains the car most likely to, one would suspect, over the remainder of the race. As the two Ginettas continue to fly in tandem as they have done throughout much of the race. And now Ivanov gets a good run on Magnoni coming out of turn 1 as the Italian tries to squeeze the Bulgarian for the run up to turn 2, but Magnoni is through, or rather Ivanov is through past Magnoni. Now can Luca look to reclaim the position on the brakes into turn 2? He thinks better of it. Instead might try and tighten the exit, out sprint the Bulgarian, because Ivanov a little bit tentative on the apex, but Magnoni took exactly the same racing line, and so that move sticks from Simeon Ivanov. But what we saw, if you've only just joined us, is that Ivanov was struggling to lead it from the front in the early stage of the race. He was the little bit the cork in the bottle, and it is much easier to follow than it is to lead. So now that Ivanov is out clear of Magnoni, does that mean Magnoni is going to fade, or does it mean that they'll all be queuing up behind the Bulgarian? If anything, Magnoni, having lost confidence a little bit, has slipped adrift of Simeon Ivanov through the 2nd sector. The proof will be in the sector 2 times. For Ivanov, it's a 44.9. For Magnoni, a 45.3. So he's 4/10 back through the middle of this lap alone. Battle at the front of the field remains fairly static at just under 2 seconds. And then still this 3-way fight for 3rd place. In 6th it remains Javier Ibran, and in 7th Tony Castillo-Navat, as we embark on the 24th lap of the race. No safety cars, and therefore they're going to get their full 50 minutes of racing in, unless something were to go fairly spectacularly wrong amongst this group of cars in the next few laps. All the pit stops, we'll be pleased to hear, were concluded without any problems, so that means we're not anticipating any penalties either. So this will all be resolved on track, but that last lap was one where actually everybody drove away more or less from the car in front. But Ivanov very tentative through turn 2, but he just seems to be able to get the power down that little bit earlier than Luca Magnoni, and that maintains the buffer for him. Meanwhile, Fred Blomstead had a good lap last time around, so he has opened up his advantage over the Maserati back to in excess of 2 seconds, as this is probably part of the explanation. Running out very wide at turn 1. It's not the first time we've seen the Maserati do that, and therefore consideration of potential penalties might be a slight concern for the team, as Simeon Ivanov has just built that slight buffer over Luca Magnoni. It means that Magnoni has now got the KTM Crossbow asking all the right questions. As the heat haze shimmers off this trio of cars fighting for 3rd, they plunge downhill on to the end of the lap. For the first time, the KTM just beginning to mount a little bit of a challenge on the Ginetta, because you know that you get the feeling that if the KTM was to get into some clear air, it would be well poised to potentially break away and possibly chase down the Maserati. As it is, that was a much weaker lap last time around from the Maserati. 1 minute 43.5 as a result of that moment at turn 1. It gave away 2 seconds to race leader Frederick Blomstead. It also now brings this fight for 3rd to within 2 seconds as well. And were the Maserati to run wide at turn 1 again, then that would very, very quickly bunch up this group of cars. Again, tyre temperature must surely be something the teams are thinking about now. We're on the 25th lap of the race. Searing heat in Austria today. well and truly in the middle of the pan-European heatwave that we have been enjoying or enduring, depending on your point of view. So here's the race leader, Fredrik Blomstedt. He and Marco Helistangas looking for their first win of the season. Fourth podium as well, potentially on the cards. 6 laps remain, so we're going to have probably time, or 6 minutes remain, so we're going to have time for 4, maybe 5 more laps around the Red Bull Ring as Blomstedt reels off number 25. Across the line he comes, and that's a 1 minute 41.9 from Blomstedt. He was 4 seconds clear of the Maserati last time through. That goes out to 5 seconds, as it was a 1 minute 42.8 for the Calimere Giudici Maserati. Is a change now for 4th place. And Luca Magnoni being demoted by the KTM Crossbow. So the Naomi Schiff Reinhold Koerfler car moves up into 4th position. Now, how quickly can the KTM close down Semyon Ivanov? That's going to be the big question. Magnoni having done a fine job of maintaining that 3rd place throughout much of the second half of the race, now finding himself shuffled down to 5th in these closing stages. The consolation comes from the fact that he is not going to have to concern himself at all with the progress of Javier Ibran in 6th position. And also, what about Semyon Ivanov for 2nd place? Because it's been, again, a slightly wayward first sector on this lap from the 2nd place Maserati. Is a drive-through penalty for Javier Ibran. And Ibran might just retain his 6th place even with that drive-through penalty, because he's 20 seconds clear of Tony Castillo-Navarre in 7th. Now here is another look at that pass for 4th place, perfectly judged through the final turn. You'd sense the KTM warming up for that move for a couple of laps previously, and that time around Magnoni just left enough space as Blomstedt accelerates on. 4 minutes left on the clock, so I think we're going to have time for 3 more laps, including the one that he starts now. And another consistently strong lap, almost a second gained over the Maserati. And in turn, the Maserati regrouping and not slipping any closer to Semyon Ivanov last time around. Ivanov, however, has been caught very, very rapidly by the KTM Crossbow, which sets its best lap of the race, a 1 minute 41.7. And so it could be all changed for 3rd place between now and the checkered flag as Blomstedt goes in his way. Javier Ibran serves his drive-through penalty. The fight for 3rd and 4th between the KTM Crossbow, the sky blue Ginetta of Semyon Ivanov. Here it is now as they head out of turn 2 along the back straight, and headlights ablaze from the KTM. But what we saw when Ivanov was busy defending 2nd place in the early stages of the race is the Bulgarian knows how to launch a pretty robust defensive drive, but the KTM already gliding up to the tail of the Ginetta, coming downhill out of turns 3 and 4. This is turn 5. Downhill left-hander, and the KTM possibly lining up for a move into turn 6. Not quite enough time in the double left-handers, and then turn 7, not really an overtaking opportunity. It's going to be the 2 downhill right-handers, turns 8 and 9, where possibly we can see the challenge. It was turn 9 where the KTM eased past last time around. Are we going to see a repeat of the manoeuvre? Not quite. But the battle for 3rd and 4th really as close as it has been at any stage in the race so far. We go into the penultimate lap of the race. And so just 2 more laps to defend for Semyon Ivanov to provide him with his first podium of the season. As it is, this will be the Bulgarian's best result of the year by quite some margin. 8th places and a 10th at Paul Ricard have been the order of the day. As the cars head on uphill towards turn 2. But Ivanov has been very good at perfecting his exit speed from turn 2 throughout the course of the race. He does it again, and therefore the gap opens up between the blue and black car. The pair of them have also eased a long way ahead of Luca Magnoni in 5th place. Tony Castillo-Nava, by the way, did take 6th place as a result of Javier Ibran's drive-through penalty, so that demotes Ibran to 7th. A lap and a half remain here at the Red Bull Ring. The big battle that remains is the one for 3rd and 4th position between Simeon Ivanov in the Ginetta, the KTM Crossbow, driven this weekend by Naomi Schiff and Reinhold Koerfler. And Ivanov has just got 1 lap and 1 corner to hold on. And he negotiates that 1 corner without any problems. Again, gets the exit reasonably strong. Not sure that the KTM will want to roll the dice on the brakes into the first corner. Just looks to the inside, nothing doing there. So Ivanov able to stand his ground. All the while, though, out front, here is our race leader, Frederick Blomstedt. And Blomstedt now almost 8 seconds ahead of the rest of the pack. He and Marco Heather-Stangas looking for their first win of the season. It's been a well-managed race. They were aided a little bit by the demise of Oliver Freymuth, which certainly helped. But once Blomstedt was able to get out into some clear air with just under half of the race remaining, he has thereafter been able to manage his pace, not unduly work the car, and will richly reward the efforts of the team, because if you have just joined us, that car came a pretty distant 2nd place, an altercation with the Armco barrier on the exit of the final turn in qualifying earlier on this morning. The team have worked wonders to get out on the grid and have been repaid with a fine effort from their drivers, as Frederick Blomstedt, Marco Heather-Stangas about to win the 5th race of the Euroseries powered by Nova season here at the Red Bull Ring. Blomstedt has just got 1 corner remaining and he accelerates through now. The checkered flag is ready and waiting, and it's going to be victory for Marco Heather-Stangas and Frederick Blomstedt. Beautifully managed race for the Ginetta pairing. 2nd place will go the way of Mauro Calamir and Claudio Giudici, and Simeon Ivanov does hold on for 3rd place in the Ginetta ahead of Naomi Schiff, with Luca Magnoni then claiming 5th position. So as ever in the Euroseries powered by Nova, a race with plenty of drama and twists in the tail. Oliver Freymuth doing all the leading in the early stages before mechanical troubles plagued the McGann, pitching him into retirement. We lost early on Roberto Gentili and Tiziano Capoletti after a collision at turn 2. But then once the pit stops had done their thing, it was Heather-Stangas and Blomstedt who emerged, taking the flag just fractionally under 8 seconds clear of the Maserati of Giudici and Calamir. And Simeon Ivanov, a fantastic performance for 3rd. So there you have the confirmation of the result. Heather-Stangas and Blomstedt winning it from Giudici and Calamir. Then Simeon Ivanov from Naomi Schiff, Luca Magnoni, Tony Castillo-Nava, and then Javier Ibran demoted to 7th as a result of that late drive-through penalty. The fastest lap of the race was set by Mauro Calamir at the wheel of the Maserati, a 1 minute 40.479. Well, that is half the weekend completed for the Euroseries powered by Nova. You'll be able to join us, however, tomorrow afternoon at just after 3 Central European time, and we will be bringing you all the live coverage of the 2nd race of the weekend. Will we be seeing our first double winners of the season? We haven't had that yet, but Blomstedt and Stangas may just be able to do it, or will it be the Maserati? Potentially Oliver Freymuth, hoping that the German's mechanical maladies are nothing too serious and that he will be out for race 2. For now, though, to a halt for Frederick Blomstedt as he disengages the seat belts and will hop out of the heat of the cockpit of the Ginetta. And yes, there's confirmation for you. It was Claudio Giudice who drove the second half of the race. Mauro Calamia, the first half, a celebration for Blomstedt. He and Marco Helistangas have been perennial finishers on the podium this season, except for their retirement in race 1 in Slovakia. But now they get the honour of the top step of the rostrum. Congratulations all around. Calamir and Giudice in second place, and Simeon Ivanov completing the podium. Very happy drivers in Parc Ferme. It's a handshake for Simeon Ivanov. You can get a sense of just how hot it was. Look opposite, that's Frederick Blomstedt, in fact, who receives the congratulations. Ivanov still yet to disentangle himself from his helmet and hands device.
Yeah, this one, because I missed the gear stopped in the neutral.
So let's take a look back then at the highlights of the race. And off the line, it was the McGann of Oliver Freymuth who got the early advantage, but then a superstar from Simeon Ivanov allowed him to sneak past Marco Helistangas into the first turn. Thereafter, Ivanov was something of a cork in the bottle, and what that left was Helistangas vulnerable to the challenge from Mauro Calamir. So when Helistangas overcommitted into turn 1, trying to depose Ivanov, that gave the Swiss driver in the Maserati the opportunity to draw alongside and look to push past. And that's precisely what Calamir did on the long run up to turn 2. Moments later, Calamir finding a gap that was barely there to the inside of Simeon Ivanov, promoting him up into second position. All the while, Freymuth led the way. Eventually, Helistangas was able to squeeze past the Bulgarian. And by that point, Luca Mainoni had also joined in the battle. Roberto Gentili went for a move at turn 2 that was never really on. Tiziano Cappelletti and Gentili both into retirement. Post pit stops, Freymuth was leading. He retired, and then Claudio Giudice overhauled by Frederick Blomstedt through a beautiful switchback manoeuvre from the Swedish driver at turn 2. So it was victory for the first time in the Euroseries powered by Nova for Marco Helistangas and Frederick Blomstedt. Second place to Claudio Giudice and Mauro Calamir, with Simeon Ivanov completing the podium in the first race here at the Red Bull Ring. So plenty for the spectators to enjoy whilst basking in the July sunshine. Absolutely postcard perfect day. As the drivers enjoying the opportunity, I suspect, to rehydrate before heading on to the Red Bull Ring podium. Just a few weeks since we've seen stars of the Formula 1 World Championship on the rostrum here at the Red Bull Ring. Teams ready at the foot of the podium to welcome the drivers up on to the rostrum, and the retirement as well for Freymuth potentially could have significant bearing on the points situation, because this weekend takes us to the halfway point of the season. Thereafter, we've got visits to Misano, Mugello and Spa-Francorchamps to come. And so Freymuth, after dominating that first race of the season at Paul Ricard, it looked as if this was possibly going to be his opportunity to get back to winning ways. It didn't happen like that. Hopefully the problems from the GAN are not too serious. Likewise, we would hope that the Ginettas Tiziano Cappelletti and Roberto Gentili are repairable. Gentili, I should add, has been summoned to race control with pretty much immediate effect to explain his part in the incident. None of that, of course, be of any concern to Frederick Blomstedt and Marco Helistangas. And what about the Maserati of Calamir and Giudice? Will that be in a position to challenge for victory tomorrow? Simeon Ivanov, the Bulgarian driver, certainly his strongest performance of the season. A really fine fighting performance from Ivanov, and he takes his place thumbs up on the third step of the podium. Runners up then, Claudio Giudice and Mauro Calamir. Great to see the Maserati in the series and really enjoying the high-speed sections of the Red Bull Ring circuit. And then our race winners, Frederick Blomstedt and Marco Helistangas.
So let's do the trophy now from Tatiana for the third position, the Dritteplatz, Simeon Ivanov. The second place, the team, Mauro Calamir, Claudio Giudice.
So the presentation of the trophies well underway. Winning trophies for Blomstedt and Helistangas. Really nice trophies as well in the Euroseries powered by Nova. They celebrate on the top step of the podium. We will be back in action with the Euroseries powered by Nova just after 3:20 Central European time tomorrow. In the meantime, for myself, Ben Evans, thank you for your company. We'll see you tomorrow.